So our early experiences are going to tell us if we're safe or not. Now, you'll hear later on about how that foundation of trust and attachment and safety is formed. So I'm not going to get into it a whole lot. But in essence, you've got an infant, and I've got a newborn grandchild, and I know that multiple times a day, he's either hungry, or he's thirsty, or he's cold, or his diaper needs changed. So thousands of times a day, I have the opportunity to say, oh, buddy, you don't feel good. And I, as your caregiver, am going to come provide care for you in a very sensory way and make you feel better. I don't change his diaper like, oh, yuck, oh, ugh, you're disgusting. This is terrible. And like wave my hand to make it colder on him. No, I'm like, oh my goodness, look at you. You must have eaten a lot. I normalize this sensation. And guess what happens when I'm done? I don't just put the diaper on and send him on his way. No, I pick him up and I squeeze him. I engage what we call the proprioceptive system. I squeeze him and I might smell his sweet little head as I do that. Now, that is how we learn to have unpleasant sensations from our environment, but that our caregiver can help us regulate through them, a co-regulation, so that we aren't upset when our sensory system isn't going well. Now, let's just take a pause without going too deep into the grief and the gravity of it, or gravity. It's not gravity, that's what pulls you down. The gravity of this. And think about our kids that didn't get that. Think about the kid that really did get that. Oh, you're disgusting. And how do they respond? What neural connections, what neural synapses are being made for them when something doesn't feel right for them? They don't feel comforted. Or the child that did cry and no one came. They didn't feel comforted. So when we look, especially with foster and adoption, and especially if they come from adverse experiences, we have to understand that their sensory system did not develop in the way that gives us the best outcome. Okay? So we have to have that lens when we're looking at it. And we have to understand that the repair of a bad sensation actually builds resilience for us. Bad sensations are not bad. By definition, or not by definition, but in reality, how many of you are guilty of like, oh, this smells terrible. And what's the next thing you do if you're in a group of people? This smells terrible. Smell it, right? We don't shy from sharing adversities with each other. But when we have adverse sensory situations and we come to community and the other person says, yeah, that does smell, I get the validity in my sensory integrative processing that, yeah, my body is making sense to me. That whole making sense of sensory integration. You and I agree that this smells terrible. We probably should not drink it. Or you might say, or we should, because we're going to do Bean Boozled and we're going to get the nasty beans and we're going to try them. And how delightful is it to play? There's a game, Bean Boozled, where some of the beans taste terrible and some of them taste good. And you don't know because they all look the same. It's deceiving to the eye. So you're in a heightened state of safe, not safe as you're playing this game. But how delightful is it because of the element of surprise, because we know it's not really going to hurt you. Right? The body is so complex, the brain is so complex that we can have adversity, but when the part of the body says we're safe anyway, we can still have fun with that and we can laugh about that. And that's just amazing. So it's not about not having adversity. It's not about not having bad sensations. It's about having community and working through those together. So the other thing I want to kind of highlight is I study a lot with Dr. Bruce Perry, and he has a theory or a model called the state-dependent functioning. And that basically means that your state of mind is going to directly affect what you're able to do in that moment. And it talks about what levels of your brain are most activated. And I like to kind of say, if you can imagine an MRI, which is where they put you in a tube and then the parts of your brain that the neurons are being activated, that the chemical reactions are happening and the electricity is going in your brain, it lights up on these MRIs so you can see where the activity is in the brain. So when the brainstem, the three parts of your brain, you'll hear more about this later on today as well, but when that downstairs brain, the brainstem, the diencephalon, those areas, when they light up, your body is literally thinking, I want to be safe. And I'm not thinking of anything else. Working with a child who experienced violence in her home. bad violence. She was in the midst of it. Her brain for the next week or so literally could not think, could not feel, could not talk, because it was just, I need to keep my body safe. If I were to MRI her, it would be very bright in that bottom section. The middle section is more of your emotions. And then the top section is your thinking and being able to put these connections and these sensations together. And so when you have state-dependent functioning, it says essentially what is happening in your environment, what sensory sensations are you taking in that are giving safe, unsafe cues to your brain that tell which part of your brain to be the most active at that time. And what's fascinating is when we live in chronic stress, you'll see that activity pull back from that frontal cortex. And it's hard to think. It's hard to plan in the future. You're thinking of just the moment. You're not thinking of tomorrow. And that's why you can look at a child and say, why did you lie to me? You know I'm going to figure this out. It's because they're not thinking of tomorrow. They're thinking of, I don't want to get hit because my brain told me I got hit before by taking this cookie. So even though I know you're going to count the cookies and know I took the cookie, I'm still going to tell you I didn't, because my brain literally cannot think of consequences past this moment because of my state-dependent functioning. And when we look at adversity, we kind of find that we kind of lower our brain function on that chart. So that's important too when we think about these kids, and to be thinking, what is your capacity in this moment? And that helps to explain too why in the morning can this kid get their shoes on and get out the door and everything's great, but on Sundays, and we're trying to get to church, they fall apart. Well, they've already been up for 2 hours. They've already used a lot of their neural synapses for the day. Their little bucket of synapses is a little bit low at that point. And by bedtime, they can't put their shoes away because their state-dependent functioning has been lowered. So how do we build that up? You get an occupational therapist to come in and help you. And I'm going to give you some strategies here as well today. So that relationship, also want to think about our sensory processing and the familiarity in our DNA. Our DNA is worked into our sensory preferences. How many of you, good Midwest family, think pepper and salt is a spice? Raise those hands high. I'm a little bit more in the minority than I could be. Texas, everything has spice. It was really hard for me at the beginning. I was like, whoa, this is picante, woohoo, right? Whereas my children who have grown up in Austin, they're like, Mom, it's fine. I'm like, well, your DNA is different. You're a lot more Texan than I am. So our cultures and our DNA are going to affect our sensory preferences and that familiarity. Some children who grew up in chaos before they came to your home, guess what feels good to their nervous system? Their nervous system adapted to chaos and lots of sensory input. So when I grew up in a home where there was violence and there was constant moving and constant noises and constant flashing of lights and constant barrage of smoky atmosphere, just so many, I didn't have the right clothes for the temperature outside. My sensory system was bombarded. But you know what? God created us to be resilient. So we literally form pathways that make those things okay for us so that we can survive. So our body gets used to those sensations, and now we come into this quiet, calm, sweet, serene home, and to our bodies, that is unsafe because we formed synapses and neural connections to be more comfortable here. So it has nothing to do with you not providing a great environment. It's just not the environment they're used to. So we don't want to throw smoke at them and sirens and lights and yelling. That's not pretty functional. But maybe we could have the TV on in the background with some hip hop music playing. That would bring a little chaos to the moment. Maybe we do have the lights a little brighter than what we're comfortable with because it's comfortable for them. Maybe we allow them to walk around in a t-shirt when it's 40 degrees out, because that feels comfortable to them, right? So we have to look at their background and their DNA and the familiarity with how they were developing their sensory systems. We also have to understand that when you bring a new human into your home that possibly has different DNA than you do, their sensory preferences might be different than yours. And as much as we want to model and shepherd and mold these children, we have to be respectful of their preferences as well. And I work with so many clients where that kid wants to play the hip hop music and they want to jump on the trampoline for 25 hours. And the mom is like, visually, I get dizzy watching him. He is so loud and it's an insult to my sensory system. That is valid. Feel those feelings and vent them to your friends. Get in a relationship. Find a group where you can express how frustrating that is for you. Own that about yourself. And then look into his precious eyes and say, okay, buddy, I'm going to let you jump that time, but I may not look at you. I may have to avert my eyes, or I may have to find a different way for you to meet that sensation. But I'm not going to try and change you out of it because that's who you are and that's how you were created. And I'm going to call an OT that's going to look and say, 20 hours of jumping is not functional. So how about we put a weighted blanket on him and have him jump with a vibrating toothbrush, and we really give him the input he's seeking, and then he'll jump for 10 minutes instead of 24 hours. So sometimes when a kid is really seeking that intense input, instead of saying, let's calm down, no one's ever calmed down in the history of calming down by being told to calm down. Does not happen. If you're really seeking something, I have to match that energy. If you come up to me and you're like, I just broke my thumb or my finger's cut, and I looked at you and I was like, wow, you need a Band-Aid. That's a bad cut. You would be like, I'm cut. Do you see this? Instead, I meet them with the same level of activation. You're cut. Let me see it. Let me see you. Let me join in your dysregulation. Let me taste it with you with that nasty bean. Let me get up here with you and form that relationship. And then once I've got you in that relationship, now we're co-regulating. And now you're borrowing energy from my nervous and sensory system, and I can calm you down at that point. You're hurt. Oh my goodness, that's a cut. Let's get it Band-Aid. Let's get it fixed. Let me put some pressure on it. I'm going to teach you today, if you learn nothing else, a hug can cure a million things. It's that sensory squeeze. And if the child does not have a hug early in their life, that hug is being sensed as danger. And that's really frustrating because you're looking at this kid and you're like, this kid just needs a hug. If I could just hug this kid. But you have to be respectful of their nervous system. So what do? You get them a weighted blanket. You get them a big, stretchy sweatshirt. A sweatshirt that's a little bit too tight that they can put on, and you allow them to put the hood on and put in their headphones. And you let them rock in a chair while they're doing it. That is a hug from you for a kid that won't take a hug. And then they meet that need, they feel better in their bodies, and eventually, because I'm rocking next to you, I'm going to get my mirror neurons going, I'm going to wear a hoodie just like you, and I'm going to let you know I'm on your side, and then we can hug later. But in that moment, their hug looks different than a hug that we might think. But if we look at the body and the sensations and the information coming in through their senses, that's a hug. Can you see how we get there? So that's what I hope to encourage you today in this brief time that we have, is to look at their bodies and say, what are they seeking? What are they looking for? How can I provide that for them in a way that's respectful to them, right? We relate through our senses. Hugs are tactile. That's your tactile sense. Food. You don't have any event that somebody doesn't form a food train, right? Funeral, wedding, anything, any happy, sad, conflicting event, there's food because we connect through food. We have different cultural foods. We eat this food at a certain time. We connect over this food. Who had their black-eyed peas and cabbage? Did everybody do that this year? Because I'm really ready to kind of move forward. But those are traditions for people, right? Again, breaking the bread. These are all traditions, and they involve food that brings us into connection, right? Connection could be through food. It could be through music, through movement, dancing. So you've got the tactile and the taste through the food. Music is auditory. Movement is the vestibular sense and the proprioceptive sense. I don't have time to get into those today. I've got podcasts that are on them that you can go see. I hope you look up those terms and get to know them. Proprioception is really just the squeezing of the body so that you know where you are in relation to people and things around you. And then vestibular is in the inner ear, and it's how you're moving and how your head, it's what keeps your head from hitting the floor with gravity. So you got these little canals and the fluid moves because of the gravity, and it tells you kind of like how you're moving around. It's your balance, essentially, is the vestibular sense. Your pheromones, your smell. You have your own smell, right? When people have grief, it helps them to have an item that smelled like the person because that smell connects you in that relationship. It's a sensation that brings you to relationship. If you have a child that came from a smoky background, let them have a smoky sweatshirt. Maybe they put it into a Ziploc bag that they only open in a certain part of the house so that it doesn't permeate through your home. But let them have that because that's familiar, and familiar means safe for these kids. And art and communication, any kind of art or communication, those are all your senses being put in there together. So that's where TBRI gets into the senses.